This is my 2003 Mitsubishi L200 project. It's a K74 with a 2.5 TDI engine, manual gearbox with a locking rear diff. I've needed a pickup for a few projects I had coming up, and I didn't fancy paying full price for a working truck, so cheaped out and got one that was broken instead. This was listed locally to me as a non-runner, citing a snapped cam belt as the cause. I was told the previous owner was driving down the motorway, it cut out and then wouldn't restart. The AA were called, and in their infinite wisdom, it was diagnosed as a snapped cam belt, and he dumped it at the dealer to sell on. Upon viewing, it's clear that the timing belt actually wasn't snapped, as it turned with the engine as it cranked over, and something else must be the cause. From what I can tell, it's semi-common for the timing belt to let go in the 4D56 engines, and if the pistons do hit the valves, then the damage is usually just a few snapped rocker arms and the valves stay straight. With this in mind, I paid the price and with the help of a friend, trailered the truck back home to get to work diagnosing the problem. As I'm going through the steps in the video now, these apply to most non-running vehicles when you don't have any information about why they're not running. Go through the easy steps first, and then on to the harder ones later. You've seen me checking the fuses for continuity to make sure none are blown, and it's not an easy issue. As all the fuses I check in the engine fuse box and the driver's footwell are okay, I move on to the next item to check. This small black box is the engine control relay and is another common problem for L200s. It's just a 4-pin generic relay switching 12-volt power on and off, and it's simple to test. I made some patch leads to touch to the battery terminals to hear if the relay clicks. If it clicks, it's working normally, but you can also test the continuity between the pins when the switch is closed to confirm. Fundamentally, diesel engines need a few things to run: compression, an air supply, a fuel supply, and for these things to happen at the correct time. With all of the electrical controls passing basic tests, it's time to dig into some of the other items I mentioned before, starting with compression. I wanted to check if the rocker arms were still in one piece and intact. If the valves weren't letting air into the cylinders, then the engine wouldn't run, so here I'm taking off the valve cover to take a look. I was hoping this would be a simple engine to work on, being relatively simple and Japanese, but with most bolts not being undone in 18 or more years, it was slow going in some patches and everything needs to be removed in a specific order, and as always, the first time you do something is the longest time it takes. you can see all of the rocker arms here. All of them are intact, so not the source of the issue I have. This cam cap at the front looks slightly cracked, but I can't be certain and we'll have to take a look further. As the rockers are all in one piece, I start to put everything back together and move on to the next potential issue, fueling. I've not shown it in this video, but I did confirm the engine timing and all was set correctly. Another common issue on this engine is the fuel shutoff solenoid. You need to check that it receives voltage from the engine to release fuel to the pump. It should also make an audible click when it opens. This item is keyed directly into the immobiliser, so if this item is not receiving voltage you might have an immobiliser issue. The 4D56 uses a mechanical fuel pump driven by the timing belt and draws fuel through the fuel filter housing from the tank. There isn't a lift pump in the tank, only the mechanical pump. And as with all diesels, air in the fuel lines can cause no start issues and general running issues, so I had to bleed the current fuel system of air. Starting with the fuel filter housing, I removed the bleed bolt and hand pumped the air out of the system. We'll try for a start after this. Since it still won't start, the next step is to bleed the air through the injector lines to make sure there aren't any air locks in those. Crack the injector lines off at the injector and turn the engine over to allow fuel to squirt out of the lines and purge any air in the system. It still won't start. Off camera, I also tried some easy start against my better judgment, and still, it wouldn't start. So, near enough, we could rule out fueling being the issue here. I also made a little wiring patch so I could control when to give voltage to the shut-off solenoid that I mentioned earlier and rule out any power delivery issues or immobiliser issues, but again, this didn't solve my issue. You might have spotted earlier in the video that the radiator was low on coolant, and it was in the back of my mind for a while. I topped the radiator up with 4.7 litres of coolant. At this point, I was expecting the bad news, and sure enough, the engine was pressurising the coolant system. Unfortunately, another one of the L200's favourite pastimes is to blow head gaskets, and that's exactly what happened here. It's more work than I was expecting to have to do, but seeing as I bought it for spares or repair price, I couldn't really get a better deal, and there's enough budget left to fix the head gasket. In part 2, I'll be removing the head and inspecting for the cause of the problem. I also have a better camera angle, so keep posted and watch out for the next one.